The Alien in John Carpenter's The Thing is based on them, as is the T-1000 in Terminator 2. Both shapeshifters that can imitate other life forms and are almost completely resistant to physical attacks, except for explosives and high heat. As you've seen, they can resist heat up to a point, but I'm certain that if it gets hot enough, it will kill their cells. So the ideal munition to use against them is something that has explosive force and high heat, which would be a high explosive incendiary round. As with vampires, decapitation will kill them if they can't regenerate in time. But as I said, your chances of accomplishing that when they see it coming are just about zero. I suppose that's why in common vampire lore, they only try to kill them when they're asleep. This past year, I had a conversation with a Drac, a male imitation, who told me that they're immortal. I know that they live much longer than humans, and that when their current human identity or persona dies, they can receive a new imitation code and become someone else, perhaps even starting over as a child. But are they truly immortal? I don't know. It seems unlikely to me, but anything is possible. Both of these are depicting shapeshifters in different ways. The one on the left is a relief from the ancient Mayan civilization. It's a man coming out of a serpent's mouth. The man is not being eaten. He's emerging from the reptilian form. He's changing from the reptilian form into something that looks like a human. The one on the right comes from an Italian Renaissance painting, and he's depicting a shapeshifter by simply putting a man's head on a dragon's body. The Dragon Kings of China are depicted in the opposite way, by putting a dragon's head on a man's body. And they can do this in reality, shift specific parts of their bodies completely to one form, while keeping the rest of their bodies completely in the other form. So for example, they could have a human head on a Drac's torso, with the arms in tree imitation form, and the legs in werewolf imitation form. They could create some very bizarre looking mythological creatures this way, and I'm sure they've done that in the past. In Dungeons & Dragons, all dragons are capable of shapeshifting, and they frequently use this to imitate other races. In recent times, the dragons of Toril were nearly all recluses, or at the very least deceptive to their true nature, living amongst other species in polymorph form. And there the truth is spelled out in Dungeons & Dragons. Of course, the reality is they're doing far more than just living amongst other species. They're completely dominating humanity on this planet. They have humans under total mind control, and they create everything about their existence. In recent times, they've made dragons popular in the mainstream media, with Tolkien's book The Hobbit leading the way. There have also been a number of characters in movies, TV shows, and video games that are capable of shape-shifting. This one is Flemeth in the Dragon Age series, who can transform into a dragon. She's supposedly a human who gained this ability from evil spirits, but in reality, she'd be a dragon that's polymorphed into human imitation form. There's also the game Drakensang, in which shape-shifting reptilians have infiltrated and taken over human civilization, disguised as humans, of course. The entire game is based on uncovering that conspiracy. The other cover is from Divinity 2, and in that game, the player character is able to transform into a dragon. This is the character Saskia from The Witcher, Assassin of Kings. Unlike Flemeth, Saskia is naturally a dragon, and her human form is an imitation. She's in her human imitation form when you first encounter her in the story, so you think she's human for most of the game, until she reverts to her native form to defend a city. There's a large hole at the base of Saskia's horn, right behind the eye socket. That's similar to what we see on Pocker's devil. Presumably that's the ear cavity, which would mean that they have excellent hearing, despite the lack of external ears. The horn would also help to amplify sounds, as it intensifies and transmits the vibrations into the ear, almost like a megaphone. A large ear hole like this would also pick up lower frequencies than a human ear. The newborn also has several holes in the side of its head. Given that all three have them, it's very likely that this is a feature of the native form. So it seems that all of their native senses are superior to humans, except perhaps for touch. Almost every culture from around the world has some mythology about dragons. They can be found in legends, ancient works, monuments, coats of arms, and national symbols. The most common explanation is that humans mistakenly identified other creatures as dragons, crocodiles, lizards, and I've heard some say elephants and whales. Another typical explanation is that humans simply made dragons up from their imagination. Apparently, all of these different cultures from around the world made up the same imaginary creature with the same basic appearance. But even if that were true, why would they build monuments and such to a creature that doesn't even exist? What they usually say is that humans invented dragons as an object of fear to make themselves afraid, because according to them, humans thrive on fear. So all of these different cultures imagined the same non-existent creature and made legends and displays of it to make themselves afraid, because they love being afraid. That's their serious explanation. I've also heard the explanation that ancient societies dug up dinosaur bones and took them to be dragons. Not quite as stupid as the "they made it all up" explanation, but still stupid. No. The reason that dragons appear in all of these different cultures is because dragons are real. That's the logical explanation, which I've proven is true. And it's not humans putting up these monuments. The Dracs are putting forward these monuments and symbols mostly as a sign of their dominance, and how they can flaunt themselves in plain sight, right in front of the deaf, blind, and dumb humans. We're right on top of you, but you're so blind and stupid you don't see a thing. That's what they're saying. Dragons usually appear in mythology as beasts that only possess animal-level intelligence, but when they're shown wearing crowns, it definitely says that they're sentient beings, and that they are in fact in charge. The one on the left is also eating a human child, and the meaning of that is clear. It shows their dominance over humanity, and that humans essentially exist as livestock to them. The one on the right is from the coat of arms of Tatarstan, and the one on the left is a coat of arms from Renaissance Italy. That coat of arms is also used for the Alfa Romeo logo. If you have a working mind, you'll know the truth about your existence just by looking at this, that your rulers are dragons. This is the Ouroboros, which is a serpent encircling a human child and skull, and it says, "From birth to death. From birth to death, they own you." And of course the serpent is wearing a crown. It's not difficult to get the meaning of this. This is the same painting that I showed earlier, from Renaissance Italy. We know who the dragons are, and the dog almost certainly represents humanity, obediently waiting to be leashed by its masters. The green dragon is holding some sort of large ring, but I have no idea what that represents. unless it's intended to be a new leash. The middle frame is a shot of the Wheel of Pain from the original Conan the Barbarian movie. This shows the hierarchy of the races that control this world. At the very top, there's a reptilian creature, and we know what that represents. Directly below it, there are figures that look like birds' heads, possibly a sentient avian race. On the level below the walkway, there are humanoid faces that have a reptilian appearance. These must represent the Drac shapeshifters that live among us, controlling our society. They're the agents in the Matrix movie. Of course, below them you have the humans turning the wheel, which you don't see in this shot. Humans are at the very bottom of the hierarchy, and they're not really considered part of it. They're just cattle. It's possible that the Dracs at the top are a different species from the shapeshifters that we see. The artist who drew the skulls showed two distinctly different species of Dracs, so this may be true. That's King Tut's death mask on the left, and that coat of arms from Renaissance Italy on the right. Like the Wheel of Pain, they both have reptilian and avian figures together, indicating that they're more or less co-rulers of this world. Notice that the serpent on Tut's mask is taller than the bird's head. That may indicate superior rank, but I'm not certain if that's the intended meaning. That's Iceland's coat of arms in the middle, which has a dragon and a bird, a rock. In the original coat of arms, it was just those two, but more recently they added the giant bull. The one on the right is the House of Borghese, the family of Pope Paul V. The other animal representations of gods were probably Dracs imitating those forms. The Egyptian god Anubis, for example, which is a jackal's head on a man's body. The Dracs could create a form like that, any kind of animal's head on a man's body. But in this case, I don't think the bird is an imitation, since it appears alongside the reptilian, sometimes wearing a crown. So I believe that this is a real species that is or was present here. They're part of the alien collective that's controlling humanity. Here are three more birds wearing crowns. The Austrian coat of arms on the right, Poland in the middle, and the House of Alaprandi on the left. Of course, the eagle and phoenix have appeared in many flags and coats of arms throughout history. Looking at these depictions, it's clear that they're a monstrous race, and they don't look benevolent either. So it's not surprising that they're allied with the Dracs. The relief on the right is a god from Assyrian mythology, which is likely a representation of this avian race. The Skeksis in the movie The Dark Crystal are almost certainly based on this race, which is probably a more realistic depiction. They do have a monstrous appearance, and there are some reptilian characteristics as well. I've never seen any reversions that indicate an avian species, so they're probably not polymorphs, but I don't know that for certain. Flying craft have been seen in the skies throughout history. There's the Prodigiorum Liber from the time of the Roman Empire, which contains witness accounts of flying craft, discs, and orbs. All of these pictures have a similar looking craft in them, a disc made up of segments, and they're all from different places and times. The bottom right picture is reproduced from Prodigiorum Liber. The top right are coins from France, and that's a monastery painting on the left, from the 1500s. They've always been here, no matter what level human technology is at. As I said, I've seen these craft myself, in videos and in person. Obviously, they're not flying on Bernoulli's principle like planes and helicopters, and they're not using propulsion like a rocket. They're producing some kind of electromagnetic field that generates force. So they're not flying on the air. They're flying on the electromagnetic grid. But until we capture and examine one of these craft, we won't know exactly how they operate. On the other side of the world, they were getting the Aztecs and Mayans to butcher themselves so they could eat their flesh and drink their blood. That's what you're looking at here. These are Dracs eating human sacrifices. Except for the top right picture, which is an artist's interpretation of Popol Vuh. The other three are from Aztec codices which were written in the 16th century, copied from earlier codices. Interestingly, the Drac in the bottom right picture has 3 fingers on each hand, which we know is accurate to the native form. It also has 3 toes, but one of them is positioned at the back of the foot. It's possible that they do have another toe like that. I've just never seen that one reverted. The others all have green skin, but for some reason this one doesn't. The one in the top right picture is holding what appears to be a weapon in its right hand, with fire coming out of the muzzle. There's also a large bat-like creature next to it, which could represent a bat imitation form. That's definitely part of vampire mythology, so that supports what we're seeing here. The Aztecs and Mayans obviously didn't want to sacrifice their own people, but understandably, they were intimidated by these monstrous aliens that had vastly superior technology. If they resisted, they'd all be killed, so they really didn't have any choice. It must have been a nightmare living in those societies. The vast majority of missing children in the world are eaten by Dracs, or used in blood rituals. Dragons are known as man-eaters, and that is true to reality.